Hey, my name is Rob Payon, and welcome to the Proof of Talent podcast, the show where we talk about everything related to the career journey within the blockchain, crypto, and Web3 space. Today, we have a great podcast, a great episode for you. It is with Andrew and Spring from SKALE Labs. And in this episode, my colleagues Remy and Connor go over both Andrew and Spring's unique journeys into the crypto space and how they have ended up where they are at SKALE Labs, talk about what SKALE Labs is doing and building, as well as a variety of topics around team building and product in the crypto space. Before we hop into that episode, interviewing and having a chat with Andrew and Spring, if you are looking for your next opportunity within the crypto space, feel free to reach out to us at Proof of Talent. I'll include links below in the YouTube and podcast descriptions, as well as if you are hiring right now, trying to build your company, add talent to your team, we're happy to help and talk about how Proof of Talent can help to support the growth of your company. So feel free to reach out there as well. Links in the YouTube and podcast descriptions. Now let's hop into that conversation with a few folks from the team at SKALE Labs.
Andrew and Spring, welcome to the Proof of Talent podcast. An honor to have you both on. Hearing a lot of great things about the SKALE Labs team and really stoked to learn about you guys' background as well, getting into the Web3 space. How's everything going?
It's going well, my friend. It's good seeing you again. Virtual versus IOL, but very excited to be here. Yeah.
Yeah, same. Thanks for having us, Remy. We're really excited.
Absolutely. Yeah, Andrew, it's good to run into you at the Alchemy event. I was like, what's your last name? Because I know you gave me your first. I was like, yeah, we're literally interviewing you like 2 weeks from now. So that was a great introduction to build that warmth. But with that being said, starting with Spring, I'd love to learn a little bit more about your background. I know you've been in the marketing space for 15 plus years now, and just like your journey getting into the Web3 as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for asking. Yes, so, right now I'm with SKALE. I'm the Senior Director of Marketing. I joined SKALE in November 2021. So, it's been about 2.5 years now. It's been a wonderful journey. I absolutely love being there. And then prior to my time at SKALE, this was my first foray into blockchain. I was with a crypto tax software called Zen Ledger. And I was with them for about a year, and that was right prime time COVID time. So, when I actually interviewed with them, I was very honest and said, I really don't have a lot of blockchain experience. Like, I understand some of the concepts, I get it, but, I'm really not a full native. And they were like, we don't mind, you've got a lot of experience in marketing. I have been with B2B, I've done SaaS, I've done a lot of event marketing. I was at a 3D printing company called MakerBot. So I think they knew I had a lot of marketing experience, and they could kind of show me the ropes and show me how crypto works. So I joined with that. Definitely, feeling a little fish out of water, but they quickly brought me up to speed. And I was there for a year and then made the transition over to SKALE. And now I really feel like a native. I know what's going on. I know the lingo. I understand. It's a hard journey to come over to Web3 from Web2. It's very different. I'm sure we'll dive into this a bit more later, but totally different world. Threw everything out the window. But that's how I came to be with SKALE.
I'd like to just add that Spring's my meme queen. She's native. She gets it.
Well, that sounds like quite the journey. I guess now that you're in the space, what's kept you around? Where do your passions lie here, and how do they maybe align with SKALE's mission?
Oh, good question. Well, I must say what's kept me here is it is difficult, and every day is a whole new experience, which I love. It's a very challenging industry. Things change on a daily basis. Something you knew today may be totally different tomorrow. So I think you just like have to roll with the punches, have a very easygoing attitude. And what's kept me on SKALE, and what I'm personally really involved with crypto, and what I really see so many life-changing opportunities. Things I personally really like to follow is deforestation being hosted on the blockchain, tracking animals and like their extinction patterns. Like, I really find that super interesting. There's not a lot of that in the real world now, where people can collaborate and find these things and actually track things in real time. So I'm really passionate about that. I'm really passionate about music. That was one thing I was really attracted to, was you could have royalties hosted on the blockchain, if that's your song, it's your song forever. Like, you're going to be able to track it. You know who did it. I thought that was really cool, especially with the invention of Spotify, where just, music's kind of everywhere. So I thought that was really cool, like creators' rights, giving back to the artist. And we've got, we'll get into this at some point too, but we've got a couple dApps on Scale that are doing that. So that was what my really personal passion was. But, looping back to, what keeps me at Scale and why I love it, it's just, we have just a killer team, especially the marketing team. Andrew's definitely the leader there, and, our big champion. And yeah, I'm really passionate about the industry, and I just feel like I'm learning all the time, which I can't say that before at other jobs. I would say you kind of reach a peak, but I just don't see a peak getting reached here. And I just, every day is a fresh start, and it's just a really, really interesting industry that I can't even really discuss with my friends. Like, they don't really understand a lot of it. So, but they'll always ask me questions. They're just fascinated too. So, and there's so few of us marketers in blockchain. I think we're a small crew. We kind of all know each other, but, I like that. I think, mass adoption will be coming, but right now it just really fits where I'm at in my career.
Love the excitement. I mean, I just heard a lot of passion in your voice, and I think that's what this ecosystem just breeds from other people. Like you said, every single day there's this new challenge that you're battling, or this new opportunity for growth. And also, you don't hear a lot of people referencing deforestation or music as like a reference. Our team works with a lot of infra companies, DeFi, so it's a lot more focused on the crypto itself, coins going up,
Mhm.
integrations between different blockchains, but not those other different verticals, which is exciting. And then I want to pivot to Andrew as well. Congratulations, you just recently joined Scale, first CMO for their team. That's massive. You've also got a very interesting background. I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that, and how it led you to Scale.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So my career is very non-traditional, but candidly, 100% architected from the start. And so, I started actually in Hollywood. So I worked for a talent agency called Creative Artists Agency, which really at the time kind of represented the 1% of talent globally. Um, and my role there was I basically started my own division with one of my co-agents called Brand Partnerships. And really, what we were doing was we were the bridge between major consumer brands around the world in kind of every category, and then all of our clients, from actors to musicians to producers, pretty much everyone, athletes, that to run the gamut of entertainment. And then what started happening was, like, Silicon Valley started to really pick up. I'm a lot older than I look, and so I started to also become a bit of a bridge to Silicon Valley. So, examples in the early days, I was working with the Zuckerbergs to literally bring celebrities onto Facebook, or we represented Biz Stone, who created Twitter, or I was working with Google to literally build next gen media companies that could live on YouTube. And so I was at this interesting place of kind of the nexus of, like, entertainment and culture in Hollywood, marketing and brands, and then tech. Was there for about 10 years, and we evolved our business into what was called client strategy. So best way to think about it is, we had a team doing kind of M&As and working with big VCs and also big investment partners, and then I was kind of helping to develop what we were effectively building with them. So was there for about 10 years. Then I jumped, went to NBC Universal, which at the time was world's largest traditional media company, to basically build their in-house marketing agency. And so, one of the things that was exciting was, at the time, everyone was doing this. Viacom had Velocity, Vice had, like, I think it was called Vice Studios. Um, the difference for us is we built $1 billion business in about 12 months. And so, I was doing campaigns north of $150 million, for brands like Microsoft, Target, and big movie studios, big auto companies, and really, like, leveraging the power and reach of all of our media assets globally. Was there for about 3 years, and then I actually jumped to a Google-backed startup media company, that I had helped incubate, going back to the CAA days, and that was called Tastemade. And so what we did is we basically built a media company for millennials and Gen Zs that lived across social platforms, and we were able to scale that up to about 300 million monthly users or viewers, and so that was really exciting. And then I think because of this non-traditional background that I have, I was always very interested in like ad product development. And so when I was at Tastemade, I started building really unique ad products that leverage, like, our tech and our IP, but other people's tech and their IP. And so things like, Facebook would come to me and say, "Hey, we have our Instagram app. We are creating this new product. we're going to give you beta access to it. And then I would turn what's now called Reels into an advertising platform. And then, they would see it and say, that's amazing. We want to do that. I'm like, it's your product, do whatever you want. And so I started building, really interesting ad products with Amazon headquarters. And fast forward, they ended up investing in us. They poached me, brought me into headquarters. And then my role at Amazon was really to help build kind of the next gen marketing practice. And so I was a global head of entertainment and culture for all of Amazon globally, all products, all services, all countries. And really, what I was doing was working with data science teams all around the world with some budgets, obviously, to just crack the code on things like how should we approach podcasts, what moves the needle. Because most brands, they're spending a lot in like programmatic advertising or traditional advertising channels, but things like podcasts or event marketing or how do you put a brand on Netflix, which I was the first person to ever put a brand on Netflix. These were all the things that I think they were trying to solve for, next gen advertising platforms for younger generations. And so a lot of what I was doing was really just kind of cracking the code on that stuff and then using that knowledge base to help market and promote various Amazon businesses and products. And then I was also a bit of a bridge between headquarters and our media entity. So I worked with like Amazon Studios, Amazon Game Studios, and Audible and Wondery and like any of those companies, really just to create kind of 360 synergy across both companies. Was there for about 3 years, and candidly during crypto got the bug, which I can always talk about. And at the time, it was still very early. This was like 3 years ago. I said to myself, like, I'm also a VC. Like, what do I believe is going to be here today and tomorrow? And obviously, infrastructure is kind of where my head went. So I was the first CMO of Arbitrum, which for anyone that doesn't know is kind of the leading layer two in terms of TVL for Ethereum. And then after that, I went to Hashflow, which is a decentralized multi-chain aggregator. So kind of dipped my toes into the DeFi side. Candidly missed being the CMO of an entire ecosystem, and so now I am the first chief marketing and growth officer at SKALE. Yeah.
Well, you've had quite the journey, that's for sure.
100%. Yeah.
So I guess two questions for you. First off, what excites you about the blockchain space? Why did you move into this space? And then on the flip side of that, maybe what are some of the challenges you faced coming into this space?
Yeah. So what excites me and then what challenges me. So on the excitement side, like, listen, I'm going to tell you why I actually came into this industry, and I think it's different from a lot of other people, but I don't come from money. Like my whole career is primarily self-taught. I've been working since I was a teenager, and so at the end of the day, one of the things that I love about the industry is it evens this playing field for everyone. It doesn't matter, the life you were born into, the country you were born in. At the end of the day, this is opportunity, and I think that idea of an industry that's literally built to help raise up the 99% and help create better futures and better opportunities for people all over the world, like that's really what it's all about for me. Other things I think candidly, most folks I think come in typically through Bitcoin. I came in through Ethereum because clearly I'm a pretty nerdy guy. But when I started to really dig into it and understand this notion of like the next generation version of the deep web, I just kind of got the bug. And I think like anyone that's intellectually curious, like the further you go, the more you get sucked in. And so, I started with Ethereum, then I got really interested in layer twos, then I got really interested in alt ones, then I got interested in oracles and nodes and all these things. And so at the end of the day, I think there's just so much opportunity to disrupt so many different sectors. Like even, to Spring's point earlier, I grew up in media and entertainment. I'm not convinced that what I'm seeing celebrities do in the industry is what makes sense, but I already in the back of my head know what they can be doing or what they should be doing. And some of those products I've even seen kind of in development now. So I'm excited about just that notion of removing middlemen, I guess is maybe one way to think about it. And then last thing for me that was a huge passion driver is I won't get in the weeds, but like I do have a family member who has an illness that's not curable, and so I started reading up a lot about DeSci, and the best way to think about DeSci is like go back to COVID, right? So at the end of the day, like big pharma tends to prioritize the development of cures for various illnesses where there's huge money opportunity. Like a lot of people have it, but you have to also think about there's all these people in the world that have diseases that need cures that maybe aren't the priorities of big businesses, right? And so this notion of can basically real people crowd fund real scientists expedite the creation of these cures, maybe actually have ownership in those drugs down the road. I mean, that's like revolutionary type stuff, right? And also, I think for me, coming from like AI and machine learning, I worked in AI for about 3 years at Amazon. I definitely know where AI is going. I definitely see the implications around data and things like that. And I just think blockchain technology is really going to be able to leverage that stuff and do things with it that traditional technology can't. So I would say those are kind of the things that really brought me in. And then on the challenges side, I mean, there's so many challenges. I think candidly, like if you want to be a Web3 CMO, like you got to have really thick skin, and you also just have to throw a lot of the rules out the window. But I think like some of the biggest challenges I would see are building real authentic user bases. I think like in crypto, what you see a lot of projects basically fishing amongst each other for the same users. And listen, I'm a day trader. I'm clearly a DGen. It's really hard to turn those folks into sticky users because at the end of the day, they're loyal to their bags, right? And so I think again, like one of the biggest challenges that I find is, how do you bring in, for example, crypto curious everyday people, or how do you bring in, for example, video game lovers and get them to play video games on the blockchain? So to Spring's point, like there's always these challenges. And I think for me, and this is part of why I went to Amazon, like there's just a lot of test and learn iteration and experimenting with things and trying to crack the codes and seeing what works and then re-experimenting with them. And so to her point, like I enjoy the challenge. And then I think the other side of it is the technical side. Like I think traditional Web2 brands that have reached out to me to be a CMO in the past, the reason they reach out is they look at me as a modern marketer with a modern marketing skill set. And there's not a ton of us out there. Like a lot of folks grew up in very traditional marketing practices, which tend to be very, very siloed, right? And so I think for me, even back in the day when I was building out these campaigns, I was always leaning into things like, AR or voice AI or like really innovative kind of technologies and tools that I thought could create like more interesting, marketing campaigns or more interesting customer experiences. And so with blockchain, what's cool is like there's so many ways to integrate tech into these campaigns in various elements. The challenge is a lot of that stuff requires, engineering work. You might have dependency on a third party partner that you want to leverage. But I would say like that's another big challenge in general. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a big takeaway from everything you shared too is like being specialized is for marketing and BD and Web3 is a no-no. I think you have to be extremely versatile and just on your toes at all times, like in the weeds of a lot of different verticals, different industries, being able to apply what you both have learned from your past experiences into the ecosystem. Because you can have the best product in the world, but if you don't have strong marketing, it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Correct. And I think also too, like you have to sometimes think about Web 2 marketing and Web 3 marketing. And a lot of times I love to live in what's called Web 2.5 marketing because listen, you have many brands that have spent 50 to 100 years marketing products. Like they've cracked the code on certain things that are clearly effective. Those things may not resonate or appeal to current natives, but again, you have to think long term and go, we are going to hit mass adoption. Everyday people are going to come on chain, and some of those tactics that have been used for 100 years are still going to be effective. I think right now it's tricky because a lot of what you're doing is you're marketing to natives, on places like Twitter, Telegram, Discord. And again, these are contrarians. These are folks that don't like the norm, right? And so you have to think a little bit outside the box in terms of how you reach them. And the other thing I would say, because you definitely brought up a really good point, is like this notion of like a hybrid skill set. So great story for you is like 15 years ago, I was leaving CAA trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And I was like, well, maybe I want to go to an agency. And, obviously the best creative agency at the time was Wieden Kennedy. And I would talk to these incredible recruiters in, the creative field. And they would say, oh, I don't know what to do with you. You're not a producer. You're not an executive creative director. You're not an account manager. Like you don't fit in any of the boxes. And I was like, well, that's true. I'm intentionally building this 360 hybrid skill set. And they're like, I don't know what to do with you. And I was like, okay, I hear you, but I will bet you in 10 years, you will be calling me looking for 10 more people like me, and I won't even be on the market. And sure enough, that's what happens. I mean, even in crypto, I'm getting no less than, 10 calls a week for CMO opportunities. because there's such a shortage of, this 360 hybrid talent. And so what I even say to, some of your clients is like, it's hard to find these folks. You may have to find, pieces of them. So, you might want to hire a CMO, but you might have to hire 3 people to make up for that kind of hybrid skill set. And then as you're hiring talent, you also have to think about how you're evolving them into these types of folks. And so, I've now built and launched, 6, let's call it marketing businesses, practices, agencies, whatever you want to call them. And a lot of what I've done over the years is I've hired folks that have very different skill sets, integrated them together, forced that, trickle over to happen on both sides. And then 6 to 12 months later, I've got these really incredible hybrids that you just can't even find on the market.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you bring up some good points here, and I think that Scale is very lucky to have you on the team. So I guess diving into Scale specifically, would love to get some more background on the company itself and any goals that you guys might have here moving forward as well.
Yeah, I'll go high level, and then I can talk a little bit about goals, and then I'll kick it to Spring because she's been here a lot longer than I have. But I think at the end of the day, like, the best way to think about Scale is, and this is part of, I think, where folks get confused, is like, we're not an alt one, we're not an L2, but we are connected into Ethereum, right? Like, what are we? And I always like to say, like, we're built different, right? And we were intentionally built different from day one. And so what that means is we are fully EVM compatible. We are integrated into Ethereum. We're modular by design, but that modularity wasn't hype chasing or narrative chasing. It was, this is what we think is going to build the best developer experience that, again, if we're thinking mass adoption, is going to actually be scalable for games to have millions of users, for social platforms to have millions of users, for, AI products to do billions of transactions. And I can't say, again, as someone that's been the CMO of multiple chains, I can't say that that's 100% true kind of across the industry. So I think the modular design is really important. And then what's interesting too is, we call it's, Scale network, but what that is we have a network of blockchains. And so we have 2 different types of chains I would call out. One are called hubs. So we have a hub for example, gaming projects. They all live on that chain. We have a hub for AI projects. They all live on that chain. But then what happens is, and we'll talk about the gasless architecture, they're sharing that block space. And then let's say one of them, all of a sudden, a game breaks through on Epic Game Store and onboards 20 million users, and they go, we need more block space. We can easily launch their own chain, right? Like App Chain Network. And now, you still have all these games on the gaming hub, but this one breakout game now has its entirely own chain. And the process and cost of doing that for us is extremely easy. And then I think the biggest thing I would call out from a value standpoint is there's no gas fee, right? And what that means, in my opinion, is for a lot of builders, it's a much easier and faster path to user adoption. And we see that. I mean, if you look at the numbers of users on Scale compared to other chains, or if you look at the active, gaming addresses, I mean, we're 2x to the nearest competitor. And I think what that is, I'll give you an example. Haven's Compass, uh, very legitimate indie game studio that's building that game, right? A lot of these games are being built on like Unreal or Unity, right? Then next thing you know, that game is on the Epic Game Store. And so now real Web2 gamers are discovering it on Epic. They're downloading it, they're playing it, and the blockchain is completely invisible for them, right? Because, going back to like other chains, like, when I was at the other one, I would play a game. It wasn't even a game. It was like every day I would just click a button, report for duty. It wasn't very fun. And then at the end of the day, even though I was on a layer 2, gas fees were still something. So at the end of the month, like every game that I was playing on that chain, I was paying, $100 to $200 a month in gas fees, right? And, versus on Scale, I can play like a real game. I can play 24/7. I'm never, processing transactions. I'm never paying for gas fees. It's all happening on the back end. So I think that's like huge for user experience. And I think that's why, like, candidly, a lot of our games are now getting north of 10,000 daily active users, right? Like, we've removed the friction, we've removed the cost. The other thing I would call out that I think is really interesting is, like, you also have to think about, again, like crypto from a great equalizer perspective, right? So you've got all these folks all over the world playing things like casual mobile games that love gaming, right? But they may not have the financial resources to purchase a PS5 or to purchase PS5 games, right? And so I think what's really cool for us is, again, going back to kind of the gas conversation, you can be living in a third world country, love video games, play these games, and you're not paying $200 a month to play them. And then because a lot of these games are even pre-TGE, you're now also earning potential rewards on the back end. And so it's I think this is a big reason we've seen just such a massive user base for sure. Yeah.
So obviously things are going extremely well for Scale. And I'm sure that took a lot of growth. Spring, you've been with the team for a little bit longer. I'd love to hear how you guys got to where you're at now and just like overall origin story and background of Scale.
Yeah, totally, totally. You know, that was one of the big things that drew me to Scale is when I spoke with Jack Holliman, who's our CEO and co-founder of Scale Labs. You know, I could tell they were very strategic. They knew what was going to happen 5, 10 years down the road. And I did interview with some other blockchains, and I just didn't feel that strategy. I do feel like a no names being called here, other blockchains are very following the narrative, or this is out, let's launch this product that's not even fully built yet. So I really felt a different vibe from Jack, that they're like, they've been building since 2017. Mainnet officially launched in June 2020. And we've been building like heads down, especially during the bear market, just focused on the future. So for me, I found that again very attractive. I'm like, oh, they're really thinking about adoption 10, 20 years down the road. They're not thinking about just today, like how can we get the most hype today. So that's why I was like, okay, they really know what they're talking about. And Stan Klatko, who's our CTO and also co-founder too, is uber genius. Like he worked with on BLS thresholds in the very beginning. He just both of them have really great careers and backgrounds that I admire. So I was like, I'm very interested in joining here. So Mainnet launched in June 2020. And then they developed, certain things over time, interoperability between Scale. We are an app chain network. We currently have 20 Scale chains, which is a mix of the hub chains that Andrew was talking about earlier, as well as individual chains. If you have a lot of players and need a lot of bandwidth, so you can be on that chain too. So the app chain model started rolling out. There's some other things that are working on, but again, the journey, as Andrew mentioned, has been interesting from a marketing perspective, because we can't just be like, we're going to plant our flag in the L1, this is us. So we've always kind of had to craft our own story, which as a user, as someone trying to find a new blockchain or like doing their DYOR, it was a little hard for them to figure out, well, I don't understand, how do you not have gas? Because what about front running and spam bots? And, but that had already been factored in and taken into consideration. We actually do have a type of gas. It's called S fuel. It's valueless, no money needed there. You get it for free with your hubs or dApps. But for a user, it's just game changing. As Andrew was talking about earlier about the invisible blockchain, um, you know, a lot of games that you play now, you have to hit enter all the time. It's not a good experience while you're playing. It's not, I wouldn't say it was fun. But we have this one video that basically is a side by side. It's got, gameplay on one side and then showing the back end on the blockchain, showing the transactions in real time. And it's been a real great visual for us because people get it. They're like, oh, so all of that, like, I don't have to even know that's happening. It's all in the background. So again, just I feel a very unique architecture. I don't think anyone else can claim what we're doing in this space. I think it's scalable, hint our name Scale. And I just think that we're really set up well, and again, thought about the future. So but lots of cool things coming down the pipeline. I'll let Andrew hint in some of those later. But this is going to be a good year for us.
I would just add to, what Spring said, like, for me, like I had a lot of options, and this is where I chose to go. And I did put a thread on Twitter that's pinned that kind of explains my rationale. But I would say again, like Jack and Stan were a huge reason for me. And just, going back into their backgrounds, like, with Jack, what you have is you have a Silicon Valley guy that's already built and exited out of successful SaaS businesses, right? And at the end of the day, a lot of these infrastructure companies are effectively SaaS, right? You're the layer that enables people to build on top. So I think like his track record in actual business building and success was like a huge signal for me. And then with Stan, like a lot of people don't know about Stan's history, but like he helped develop the cryptography for public Wi-Fi, pre-crypto, which is one of the most secure cryptography networks in the world. He also helped develop the Java virtual machine. He worked at Los Alamos, right, where they developed, the atomic bomb. He studied under Dan Bonet, who's like the godfather of cryptography, not even crypto. So again, I think like you just have this really interesting pair of people that both have really amazing kind of pedigrees and backgrounds. And for me, that was a huge signal for these are the types of folks that I want to spend my time with. Yeah.
I think scale is conquering a problem that, or maybe not even a problem, just a use case within the blockchain space that really hasn't been capitalized on yet. So very cool to hear the background and why y'all joined. I guess the question that comes to mind, if I am like a gamer or a development studio, why would I want to use Scale as opposed to another layer two or another blockchain?
Yeah, great question. So a lot of the meetings that I have are actually with these developers, because again, I know pretty much all these chains inside and out, and we have these conversations. And like, I'm going to just give you a couple examples. Then I don't want to butt in. Here's an example. Like there's a very popular Web3 game right now that I think is a really nice looking game, that was built on a different network. They're having a gaming tournament and the tournament crashed. So if you think about, yourself as a gamer, I grew up on Nintendo, but now I've got like the Switch and all that stuff. Imagine, for example, playing Mario Wonder on your Switch, spending 6 hours to get to the final boss, and then all of a sudden like your battery dies or like the switch malfunctions. Like that's a terrible experience. Like you're gonna feel that one for a while, right? Whereas for us, because of our quote unquote built different unique modular architecture, that doesn't happen, right? So you can build these games on scale, and the uptime is so significant that like you don't run into those issues. And the other thing that I've noticed on other blockchains is, whether it's congestion or whatever, is again, you have a game that right now has 10,000 players, and then all of a sudden it goes up to 100,000, and the network can't handle it, and now the game starts lagging or the game crashes, right? But again, going back to like our unique architecture, like we are literally built so that you can launch a game, have 1,000 players, it gets covered in IGN, and now 1 million people try it out, and like it's just going to work just as well as it did with 1,000 players. And so it really is scalable. I think that's one thing. I think that the gasless thing is another. When I talk to a lot of these devs right now, and this is good to hear, because I feel like this means the market is maturing a little bit. The conversations 2 years ago used to be about grant funding and token launches and all that. Now a lot of the conversations are around like actual user adoption. Like I don't just want to launch a game to launch a token. I want to launch a game that can become the next World of Warcraft. I want to launch a game that can become the next Sims. And so I think for them, there's two things that happen. One, we just have such a large active user base of gamers that again, like one game launches that's brand new, and then fast forward, it's got 10,000 players a day in a matter of weeks, right? And I think, I don't know the number, but I think we have at least 14 games right now that are all doing over 10,000 uniques a day. But again, I think that's part of it too. Is like if you want to build a game that's actually going to get users, like this is one of the places to do that. And one of the things that I've seen that's really interesting is like we have a lot of games that like launched on another chain, and then they either migrate over or they multi-chain, and I'll use multi-chain as the example. So they multi-chain, and now that game's available on the other blockchain network and ours. And what ends up happening is they get all these new users coming in through scale, but then all the users from the other chain end up moving over because they're like, well, I can play this game on scale and not pay any gas fees. Why would I play it over here? And so you see a lot of like, I laugh at these, you see a lot of these like gas subsidy programs right now where I saw one like layer 3 today where you can like load up your gas. But I think that's the problem, is a lot of these blockchains, what they're doing is they're basically saying like, we'll reimburse your gas fees. Well, that's not sustainable forever, right? Whereas our gasless modular architecture, that is sustainable forever. Like there's never going to be gas fees, and we're not going to pay for the gas today to make up for the issue that users have today. Like we don't have gas, right? So I think the value prop is clearly there. And then I think the last thing I would say is, if you're thinking about, again, like what are the best use cases for scale, again, based on how it's architected, it really lends itself well to dApps that have very, very high transaction volumes, right? And so that tends to be games, AI. So we've got, I think, about 9 AI projects now that are doing insane amounts of transactions. And then social, like I've helped launch social media companies in the past. I brought celebrities onto Facebook, and so I know how quickly those apps can go from 1,000 users to 10 million users. And again, like you can do that on scale and not have to worry about it, right? And last thing I would say is, again, I think because of the gasless nature, it's also just a lot easier to bring crypto curious normies on chain, right? Like the example I gave before, it's like you create this game, you launch it on the Epic Game Store, no one even knows it's a blockchain game, and now you've got real gamers playing it. That's kind of hard to do with other architectures because they're going to download the game and now they're going to be clicking the transaction button every 10 minutes. It's just it's not a great consumer experience. Yeah.
That's that last part you said, consumer experience, right? That's the biggest drawback for the gaming space within Web3 is the games just aren't fun, right?
It's the
It
biggest
sounds like
drawback for crypto as a whole. Like, I mean,
yeah.
we know all this stuff will evolve and change, but down the road, you're going to be able to go to a website, type in an email address, type in a password, and it's going to auto generate a wallet on the back end, right? So I think it's easy to know kind of where things are heading, but right now there's still a lot of like friction.
Yeah, and obviously a huge opportunity within gaming, right? For onboarding, right? For
Hmm.
people to go
Yep.
in, have fun. Also, gamers are being able to take their assets across worlds or whatever it may be. Lots of opportunity there, which is excitement, which is exciting. Spring, I'd love to pivot another question over to you and talk more about the team at scale, the culture at scale, and just what that dynamic has been and how you guys have grown over the past few years.
Yeah, great question. Love talking about our team. We're actually a pretty small team compared to some of the other blockchains. As a whole, I would say the company we're about 40. And the predominance of that is we have a US very remote culture. Our headquarters are based in San Francisco. And then our engineering team are all based in Lisbon, but they are Ukrainian. So many of them are refugees that have moved to Lisbon, and there's a few still in the Ukraine too. So we are remote. But the marketing team, we are now at, is it six? I believe we're at six of
Yep.
us. hmm and then when I joined back in November 2021, there were just two of us. So we've grown slowly but surely. I was brought on as the director of marketing. We now, just as the team for functions, we have someone who does partner marketing, who handles all our DApp launches and ecosystem partners. That's quite a lot going on there. We have someone tasked with growth, who is growing transactions, growing users, growing the scale community. It really has her hands across all of that. We have someone who's, I would consider him a generalist. He really touches everything. He's doing product marketing, he's doing sales collateral. He's super talented. We have an in-house designer, which is one of our newest hires, which has been awesome. Just having someone in-house to brainstorm with, and then myself and Andrew are there too. So pretty small team. I have to say we have a great work-life balance at Scale. We all are really hustling, like we're all at our desk at 8 a.m., like really, getting stuff done throughout the day. And then we were touching base on the weekends. We even have a text chain, like, telling, I don't want to say shilling, but, some interesting conversations going on there. So we're super close. Really good work-life balance, which I personally haven't heard a lot of in blockchain industry. I feel like there's a lot of people working 80 plus hours a week. So I really appreciate that culture. And then, we have weekly meetings with the team, and we use Discord as our Slack, if you will. So that was a little bit of a transition. But, I just think everyone at the company has been brought on super nice, very collaborative, one of the best cultures I've personally worked in. And I think I've been about 8 or 9 companies. So I really enjoy going to work. I enjoy everyone I work with. And I'm really not just saying that, I'm being genuine. So I think the culture of Scale has been great. And I think you can just tell by talking with all of us, like we all seem very happy. We're very into it. We're all hustling because we all have the same goal, which is, for Scale to rise in the ranks.
I would just add to that, like this was actually one of the reasons I joined was, again, like I've been at so many companies, various cultures. I would agree with Spring. I think in crypto, like I've definitely seen some less than ideal cultures at many of these companies, and like culture trickles down from the top, obviously. And I think one of the biggest signs for me was like a lot of people that have been at Scale have been there for multiple years. I think we have folks that have been here for even like 4, 5, 6 years.
Mhm.
And I think that's always an indicator of like this is a great place to work, this is a healthy work environment, because again, if it's not, they're not going to stay for that long. But listen, I've been here for a little over a month, and I've got to agree with Spring, like of all the companies I've worked at, this is one of the nicest cultures. And I think like things I would point to are like, again, trickle down from the top. Like Jack is just a human being, and so in general, I think, and he's got great vibes, right? And so that trickles down and benefits and impacts everybody. To Spring's point, super collaborative. Like the eng team and the marketing team work really closely together. They've got ideas, we've got ideas, but we really operate as one. And I would say, of all the crypto projects I've worked at, this is the one where I really feel like I'm part of the team, and these are my teammates, and we're on the field and we're trying to win. Because I find a lot of times in crypto there can be, just like, I don't even know if I'd say the word rifts, but like just disconnects between different orgs, or this org is prioritized over this one, or this one has all the authority, and it's really just a wonderful, collaborative, nice place. And to Spring's point, like I probably work harder here than I've ever worked, but like I'm working with people that I love, and then on the weekend when I get a text message again, it doesn't bother me because it's like I also like these people on a personal human level, so yeah.
Well, Scale sounds like a great place to work. I'm glad that y'all are both enjoying it. And um, for a candidate that's out there maybe listening, what kind of talent do you plan on hiring here in the future?
Sure, sure. So I can go through a couple roles. So, I think like some of the things that we're considering are things like a social media manager, a community manager, which I really look at more as like an online event producer for Discord and things like that. Performance marketer, I think again, like not everything is organic. Don't believe it when people put that on the timeline. But at the end of the day, having a really sophisticated person that can operate as an in-house media agency, I think is really kind of essential and important. And then I think beyond that, it's really thinking about like scaling the team as we see the need, right? So great example would be Ben on our team, who Spring called out. He runs our partner marketing team. We are candidly every single quarter like continuing to just crush the previous quarter. And so I keep saying to him, I'm like, Ben, like, when are you going to raise the red flag? Like, when are you going to need help? And so I think, for example, like, another partner marketer on his team is 100% the type of thing we're going to need in the future. And then, as we start to really scale up things like content or media, we may need to also grow those functions as well. Yep.
That's awesome. Yeah, growth is huge. 2024 has been a massive year for I think the whole ecosystem in general. So it's great to hear you guys are expanding on the marketing end, and just non-technical roles in general are like starting to even out with
Mm-hmm.
technical roles in the space. Also want you guys to touch on May, because it looks like you guys had a monster May. Spring, I'd love for you to talk more about just some of the highlights and achievements for you guys' team.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. I think, some big milestones that we hit are a lot, network stats, because, they're just every month they're increasing month over month. But one big one we hit in May was we hit 50 million transactions per month, which is amazing. A lot of that does have to do with, we have an AI deep end app called Xord, and they basically crawl the internet looking for social sentiment news. They can even crawl China and Russia. They actually predicted like a Bitcoin price drop, like just a really cool tool. I would recommend everybody go check it out. But it's gaming, and then the AI dapps are really driving a lot of our transactions. And also a huge one for us is the gas fee savings. After the upgrade for Ethereum, gas fees did go down a little bit, but there's still huge opportunity for gas fees. So we just passed 7 billion total in gas fee savings, and each month that's just continuing to go up and up. So I would say transactions is a huge milestone for us. Gas fees, as well as uptime of our chains, we are at a hearty 99.9% uptime, which is amazing. And just getting better. We actually have another upgrade coming out next month too, which is going to even be faster. The finality is going to increase. So we're just improving the network. We're getting a lot of stats, and people are noticing.
Yeah, and I also saw some partnerships like Layer Zero and Crossman as well too, which two huge names in the space. So yeah, it's awesome.
I
Congrats to
give you
you
a little
guys.
alpha, my friend. We got some more coming. I think
Sounds
the
like
nice
it's not
thing for
slowing
me,
down.
no, I mean, the nice thing for me is like, listen, I think at the end of the day, when you work at a startup, like everyone on the team is BD. And so, I've now been here for a month, and you better believe I'm bringing in the old friends. I'm bringing in friends from Google and Amazon. So I'm really excited about like where our ecosystem's going long term. Yeah. Yep.
Well, it sounds like May has been great, and there are some milestones here on the horizon, which kind of brings me to my next question. What does the future look like in the next 6 months to a year, maybe? What are some growth goals that you are both excited about?
Yeah, so okay, I'm the alpha. I'm the alpha liquor. So I'll talk macro. Okay. So we do have a big upgrade coming. I'm not gonna like spill the beans on what it is, but I would just say like we're taking what's already incredible technology and just making it even better is kind of the TLDR. So that's really exciting. I'm very excited for that. Second thing I would say is, again, as someone that's helped lead an entire ecosystem before, I think there's kind of key components to like a very healthy ecosystem, and what I mean by that is more about like the customer experience, right? So when you come onto a chain, there's different types of users that are passionate about different types of things, but there's a lot of different things that everybody's doing on chain, and there's certain types of, let's call it, dapps and products that really enable that stuff to occur. And so I would say in general, what you're able to do on scale is going to change. Maybe if you're interested in other sectors, you're now going to start paying closer attention to scale. And then even like when we talk about games, for example, there's certain kind of blockchain functionality with our games that I think is going to become much more interesting as we start to launch some of these things. So, and I think the other thing that's amazing, like just to give our dev team a pat on the back, is like before I joined in, I talked to Jack about this because I actually used to be an advisor for Scale prior to joining, and I was like, what you're missing? You're missing this, and you're missing this. And he was like, no, I agree. I agree. Like he and I are very similar people. And then fast forward, I get here and I go, so Jack, like we got to dig into this. And he goes, oh, well, this dev from Ukraine on our team already built it by himself in a matter of weeks. And I was like, what? So I think like, again, testament to like the caliber of our dev team, but like, it's amazing. And I'm just excited because some of these are things that like personally for me, I'm excited to be able to leverage and play with, in my daily degenning. But at the same time, I know that they're just going to make like the experience for any new scale user or existing scale user that much better, you know?
Mhm.
And then growth goals, great question. I won't get into like my secret sauce on the marketing side, but I would say like big goals for me. One, awareness. I think again, like we touched on this before, by not being an alt one, by not being an L2, we've kind of been on this island, because we're intentionally built different. I think bringing us more into the timeline, bringing us more into the conversation is definitely a big goal. One thing I will say is like I am not a fan of chasing narratives and fake narratives. So like I will never align us with narratives that aren't authentic to us. I'm always going to either say, hey, there's this new narrative that's kind of picking up steam like gaming. Well, guess what? We're an incredible hub for great games. Like we should lean into that. Or AI, we've got all these incredible AI apps launching. Let's lean into that. But I'm not going to do things like other chains have done, like, oh, we created a chat GBT integration and now we're an AI project. Like, no, total waste of time, right? And so I think awareness and affinity is a huge one for me. And then obviously, like I think a big one for us is just continuing this momentum of users. Like, so we have a lot of programs that we're working on the marketing side, because I think we clearly have a lead right now, especially in gaming. How do we just continue to widen that gap, bring more users on? I think again, like really starting to build out our ecosystem more, bringing in more really high quality projects. We're bringing in a lot of already funded projects that are here for the long run, and then really thinking about, again, like how do we really bring this ecosystem together and start to operate as one unified force? I think is a huge one for us. But I also think again, like as we continue to just get more and more of these real users, you get the trickle down effect. You're a game dev, and maybe you've never heard of Scale, but fast forward a year from now, we 4x'd our user base of gamers. Like you're going to know the name, right? And again, if you're building a real game and you want to have real gamers and you want to have a game that lasts for 10 years, you're probably going to come here. And so I would say those are kind of the big ones. And then last one, which is a little nerdy, is like we are going to do a bit of a brand refresh. The logo's not changing, the name's not changing, but I would say like we're going to lean much more. I'll give you a little alpha. We're going to lean much more authentically into like who we are and where we're from. Yeah.
Authenticity is the key, right? And I think for both of you guys' career journey, that's how you guys have gotten here, from being genuine, being curious, and just being great leaders. So really appreciate you having you guys on the podcast. I guess kind of finishing off with this with you, Spring. What's kind of like biggest piece of advice for candidates looking to enter into the Web3 space?
Ooh, that's a good question. I feel like for me personally, it's like just don't be intimidated. It's such a different world. There's so much lingo to learn. There's so many different segments to know. Like it is very intimidating, especially as a woman. It is a bit of a man's world in blockchain. So I think how I personally got over that, I was like, you know what? No one knows everything. You know, someone may be super smart, but they might not know anything about gaming. You can't know everything in blockchain. So I think just, find your niche, learn what you want, and just kind of enjoy the ride. That was what was really important for me. It was like just don't be scared or timid. It's okay. Everybody's learning. We're all the industry's maturing all at the same time. So I just think be yourself, be authentic, and have some fun.
I would even just add to kind of what Spring said, a couple things. One, women out there, please join our industry. We need more women in crypto. I think, and the reason I say that is because, again, this is Web3. This is not just crypto, right? We are building the future of many industries. And, great example, I've had 10 marketing teams over the years. I had a lot of women on those teams because there's a lot of great marketing talent that's female. And I think to Spring's point, like some of them might be intimidated or they go on CT and they go, oh, this is a little 4chan-y. But I would just say in general, like there are great companies, there are great opportunities. It's not all the same, jump in because at the end of the day, we're trying to drive mass adoption and look at populations, right? That includes women, right? So I think having female voices and female POVs in the industry incredibly important for mass adoption, right? And then the other thing I would say is I have a little bit of this kind of playbook that I use, but I'll give you kind of a couple examples. Like, so I think the first thing is to Spring's point, like, don't be intimidated. Know that the skills and knowledge bases that you've built are transferable, right? You're just going to learn a new language and have to kind of translate a little bit, right? So, a couple tips that I have for folks. One, start listening to podcasts, right? And it depends on kind of what you want to do, but you know, case in point, this podcast. I'm sure you learned something today, hopefully, right? But podcasts are a great little entry point to understand these things. Another thing I always recommend is Binance Academy, right? If you want to start to understand crypto, go to Binance Academy, do all the lessons. You're going to learn some basics. When you're doing that, take ChatGPT and open it up, right? You're going to see terms like nodes and oracles and MEV and account abstraction. Just say to ChatGPT, like, explain X topic like I'm 5 years old. It'll export analogies that make it super, super easy to understand this stuff. Your learning curve goes up. Other things I really like learning platforms. So Layer 3, great platform where you're doing little quests, you're learning about different elements of blockchain or different ecosystems. And not only are you learning, you're starting to do on-chain actions. So you start to get comfortable with wallets and things like that. Always install Wallet Guard because it'll protect you. And then beyond that, I think the last thing is like, now you understand blockchain, you've got a passion for blockchain, which I think is important. You've got the marketing skills, and then it's really just finding the right opportunities. And so that's why, like folks like you guys, Proof of Talent, it's like building those relationships and knowing those people so that you can say, hey, I understand crypto. Hey, I love crypto. And hey, I've got great marketing skills. Like, what's the best home for me? Right. Yep.
Yeah, I agree with both of your points. And I think, Andrew, you actually touched on this earlier. Once you really start down the crypto rabbit hole, your knowledge base really expands. And I mean, at least for me personally, when I started in this space as a recruiter, had no real knowledge of how the inner workings of these companies work professionally. But it really just takes time. It takes dedication and persistence and discipline and really honing your craft here. So, no, appreciate both your inputs on that. And I guess one final question for you both. If a listener or candidate's interested in hearing more about Scale, where can they go to find some more information?
Oh yeah, for sure. So best thing to do, obviously, just go to the website scale.space. You can learn about Scale. You can explore the ecosystem. You can read developer docs, white papers, things like that. On Twitter, we're at Scale Network. Springs right on the camera there at Spring_Dunn. I'm at Andrew Saunders. And then obviously we've got a Discord community, we've got a Telegram community, and we're going to start building up some other stuff too. So jump in, it's fun. And I would say for the average person, like again, this is one of the value props of Scale. Like you don't have to be crypto native, right? Like you can go to the Epic Game Store, download one of these games, play them. You can go to some of these AI apps that have really easy to use interfaces and start experimenting. So don't let technology or friction be a barrier for you in getting on chain,
Scale is scaling. Let's go.
Let's go.
Thank you guys so much for hopping on the pod. It was an
Thank you
awesome
guys.
conversation.
Thank you
Yeah.
both.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.